I'd like to just make one other comment about the Clinton administration. I think President Clinton really made a serious effort to open up the doors and the opportunities to diversify who was in the government in his political appointees, at least especially in that first term. Unfortunately, that was great at a high level, so some ceilings were broken, as people like to say, but the bureaucracy stayed pretty much what it was, and especially in the national security and foreign policy area, it was white males. And so it's a great example where the 30% rule is really needed at a mid-level and lower level. It's not just the senior people, because the people who implement the policies are the bureaucracies. And they stay there, the civil servants, they're incredibly dedicated, but there needs to be a really shaking up of that environment if we're going to get some new thinking going. So let me just say a couple things about the characteristics of my career at this point. I do think of it as pretty successful. I see myself as throughout my career of having realized that I have a pretty high level of self-confidence, that I believe I deserve to be at the table, and I think that's important. It goes to the sense of sort of being willing to assert your ideas and also believe in yourself in a way. I have also thought it was very important, and this was especially true when I took the position in Washington, was to really think about who I was and to stay true to myself and really value the integrity and honesty and openness that I had already thought of as part of my own characteristic in terms of management style. I wouldn't deny that I'm ambitious. I think you have to think of yourself that way if you want to be a player, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. You have to be willing to accept responsibility and go out there and work hard and be dedicated to really making a difference. I think of myself as a good listener. I'm willing to delegate and empower my staff. I think that's something else that's important to realize. You have to be willing to hear the other person at the table, whether they're from a different culture, from a different organization, but if you don't sit and listen, you're never going to make some headway on solving problems. I also think it's important to sort of be a good role model. You have to show the dedication that you have and the willingness to work hard. You can't just delegate everything down the road, you know how the tilted plate concept. And then finally, I think I've tried to really show compassion and empathy for others when I've had situations where it's just a very difficult situation and you're trying to figure out what might work. So where does this lead you in terms of lessons learned? Well, first of all, I would say that, and I've been asked this many times, did I run into any kind of sexual discrimination or issues? And I've often said, I don't really know why there were the obstacles at times in my career that I've run into or what really caused them. But what I did realize was it wasn't worth trying to figure it out. It was better to try to figure out how to get past them and keep moving forward and figuring out how to solve the problem rather than to feel like you're a victim and stuck. The second thing is that I think, and this is very true of women, I value trying to have balance in my life. I'm not always successful about it, but I think it's important to finding happiness and satisfaction and actually being a well-rounded person, that while work is really important, so are your family, friends, community, and definitely your health. And those of us as we gotten older have found that it's really important to find time for yourself. The other point that I have come to realize is this incredible role of mentoring. I would say that since I was a graduate student, I have always felt that I never had a mentor, whether it was male or female. I've watched my male colleagues have mentors. I always thought, how did they do that? Where did they come from? I don't know. My professors were not ones that were interested in mentoring me, at least. And I have tried to provide myself as a mentor because I think it is so important to have someone who is more senior, experienced, and willing to talk to help the people coming behind us to think through the choices they're making, the opportunities they have to think about, and to really give them some sense of what might be possible, and hopefully to open some doors for them, to sort of help them, instead of saying, well, I didn't have help, you know, you should make it on your own. I think that's such the wrong approach to take. Another lesson I've learned is to really focus on what I call the 4 C's, which have to do with communication, cooperation, collaboration, and coordination. I have found these things to be critical in how I manage and how I sort of think of my own philosophy as an effective manager and leader. And yet they're so often ignored when you really think about how organizations are run. Studies have repeatedly shown that women are more often than men to value these types of characteristics, and that we rely on them in a regular way in our daily activities, so they're sort of intuitive to us. I think I have often found that the men I work with think that competition and confrontation is the way to sometimes get things done, that that's a good dynamic. I just was reading the newspaper. I happen to be a big football fan, and I was reading the newspaper about something just yesterday, and the coach said, well, I'm bringing in this new guy because I want to have a little competition in the summer camp we have. And I thought, why? Why wouldn't you want to just mentor the very good person you have rather than have to have him be distracted by this competitive game you're going to put together? So I've never quite understood the benefit of competition to the degree that it seems to have gotten some credibility. But I have to say that in so many organizations, that is oftentimes what a boss thinks is useful, is to have some competition between employees. I don't, and I think that's actually one of the things that women tend to bring to the table that is a wonderfully sort of good change in terms of the dynamics of organizations. Another thing I've learned in my going through my career was just to think about the fact that being a good manager is not the same as being a good leader. I think oftentimes people in the United States especially have defined leadership as being somebody who's very decisive, as if that's the only characteristic. And I think Linda in her book makes a good point about saying we have to expand the skill set that is involved in leadership, to involve compassion, to involve communication, coordination, willingness to work with others. I used to get criticized in some of my jobs because I was perceived as being not decisive enough. And I thought initially, whoa, I better worry about this. I guess I look for compromises. I'm too open to hearing diverse views. When I finally realized that I liked those things. I see these things as strengths, that I didn't need to accept the sort of patriarchal approach to these issues, and that it was really that the world needs to think differently about what leadership really consists of. My own challenge, I found, was that I had to identify what my vision was and then make sure that I communicated it effectively. It had nothing to do with decisiveness. And finally, I found that you had to be assertive. That not aggressive, but you cannot sit back in a meeting and let others take sort of the lead. And I know how many times I've sat in meetings and had made a good comment and then heard it sort of passed over and then thought, wait, that guy's making my comment and he's getting credit for it. And I used to sit back being angry at the whole process, and then I realized, wait a second, he made my point for me. Now I can add to it. I can sort of be the person to supplement it, to expand on it, not to just let him take the credit. And so I tend to sit like I am right now on the edge of my seat forward, which I've discovered isn't good for my back and shoulders, another issue. But that it is the approach I need to do to make sure I'm engaged in a meeting and different activities. And then one final comment was that I also found that I had to be strategic, that I had to think about where I wanted to go and plan to get there. I made sure when I was thinking about some changes in my career at Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, I took a sabbatical. I had the choice of going to either Stanford or Harvard. I was told that Harvard was the place you networked and you met sort of political leaders. Stanford was the place you went to go to write a book. I went to Harvard. I had a very good chance of meeting a lot of people who ended up in the Clinton administration, one of whom pulled me in. And when that opportunity came, I was willing to take the risk. You also have to be prepared to go to where those opportunities are when they come in front of you. So I think I might be running out of time. Okay, I was going to look forward, but I'll wait till the question and answer period to do that.
Great, thank you. It's great to be here. Kate didn't mention in her introduction for me that I'm also a graduate of Monterey High. And yeah, hello. See, you can go to Monterey High and turn out pretty decent. Although I think I had a lot of teachers there who question it. And also then came back to the peninsula. I worked for Planned Parenthood, and with a number of wonderful women, Lynn and Claudia started the Rape Crisis Center here in Monterey. So it's great to be back, and every time I drive in, as I'm just coming through Seaside and see that water, I think to myself, why did I leave again?